Dyspraxia is a developmental coordination disorder that can affect coordination skills, leading to it being much more difficult to learn new things. It can also affect balance and concentration, and can lead to general clumsiness. Much like 6.7 million other Brits, I have dyspraxia and have grown up learning to manage life with a learning disability that used to be commonly known as clumsy syndrome. Growing up, I always found there to be sort of a lack of understanding of the disability in education, and found it to be less represented than some other learning disabilities. I spoke to 2 university students to hear from them about how their university helps them with dyspraxia, and whether or not they feel it is well represented in education. Do you feel like dyspraxia is well recognised in education, and do you feel like there is adequate support for it?
So I don't think dyspraxia is adequately recognised in schools and education, purely because a lot of people dumb it down to just merely clumsiness, and I think there needs more to be done to recognise as it is an actual disorder, so an actual disorder.
I feel like now a lot of sort of schools do recognise it, and there will be help for that.
I think the fact that dyspraxia is less known as from dyslexia and dyscalculia is quite disappointing, because it affects quite a lot of people.
I do understand that a lot of, there is still areas to improve, and a lot of people don't understand what it is, and a lot of schools don't recognise it.
Do you feel like you receive support from your university with dyspraxia?
Not really. However, there are interventions put in place for me for my general learning disability. So for example, I'm offered more time in exams, but that's offered to anyone who has a learning disability and not particularly catered to dyspraxia.
I've applied for disability students allowance, and then with that, you basically have a meeting before you sort of apply to that, and then you basically taught them anything you struggle with, all your disabilities and everything, including dyspraxia. And because they're specialised in disability, obviously they will know about that.
The students believed that while they had been helped with their dyspraxia, it still needed to be better understood. Following this, I spoke to Nikki Ruddock, a member of the Disability Advice and Support team at MOF University, to hear about how an educational institution helps their students with dyspraxia. Can you tell us who you are and what your role as part of the Disability Advice and Support team is?
Okay, Mike, sure. My name's Nikki Ruddock. I'm a disability officer in the team, and I work with students and applicants with specific learning differences.
How do the DMU Disability Advice and Support team aid students with dyspraxia?
Okay, we would certainly encourage students to disclose, and applicants if they feel comfortable doing so. A disclosure of dyspraxia doesn't have an impact on an applicant's offer to study at DMU. We're keen for students to disclose so that we can help inform them about support and help them access that if they would like to. The support application at university is often very kind of centred around the student. That includes applying for support from disabled students allowances, but also we're keen that students have access to the full range of support. So, for example, if a student has recommendations for exam arrangements and they have exams on their course, we want them to be able to have those exam arrangements so they can demonstrate their knowledge fully.
What different ways have you seen dyspraxia affect students at the Montfort University?
In terms of study, it's primarily study frustrations that bring students to me, if you like. Meeting deadlines, planning work, structuring work, written composition, handwriting. I can write quickly or I can write neatly. I can't do both. It will vary from person to person.
How do you think that dyspraxia is represented in education, sort of in comparisons, maybe something like dyslexia or dyscalculia?
I think that's a really interesting question. I don't think it's necessarily as high a profile as dyslexia. It may be a slightly higher profile than dyscalculia. I think knowledge has probably increased quite a lot in the last, say, 30 odd years since dyspraxia was starting to be recognised more. But sometimes there's still almost the misperception that it's all to do with fine motor skills and coordination. So, you know, people talk about, you know, bring up the word clumsy, and that's been used to describe them through their life, and that's their perception. Sometimes less acknowledgement about what that means for a person in terms of study and also confidence. And I think it's mixed. I think more awareness than in the past, but not always accurate. Sometimes I think it can be seen as more about what somebody can't do, or perception about what they can't do, rather than what they can and what they can achieve.